All right guys, today we're going to talk about the GLI. It's one of those cars that's been overlooked by the car community a little bit, and I don't know why, because it's an excellent car. Underneath, it's really a GTI. It has the same transmission, it has the same engine, and really it feels very similar to drive. Now, it is very good looking too. The front end of the GLI is got a lot of different features compared to the regular Jetta. Has a nice little red line over here. It follows through with the headlights, and it's got really good headlights too. The front bumper and the rear bumper are different. It's got two pipes in the back instead of Jetta's kind of clean look with no exhaust. It's kind of hidden and tucked away. On the side, it's essentially a Jetta. It's got 18-inch alloy wheels with a red trim around them, which look nice. And this car is really overlooked because of the existence of the GTI, which is here. That's a Golf R. We said GTI, we didn't say Golf R. Okay, now Golf R, GTI. Underneath they're different, but looks-wise they're the same. So if we cover the badge, this is a GTI. So let's cover the badge. The GTI is a great car, but it's the same car with less space, and the only reason why you pay $5,000 extra for this car is because you just like its looks better. There's no real reason why you would choose a GTI over the GLI. I really like the front end of this car. I think what they've done in the front, they've made it special. They've made it a little different from the Jetta, which means that it just stands out in the lineup. And that is important because when it comes to the Golf R, the GTI and the regular Golf, the changes are a little harder to detect at first. This just seems more aggressive than the regular Jetta, and I think that's a really nice touch because it gives the car a little bit more personality. Which headlight do you like better? Do you like the GTI / Golf R headlight, or do you like the GLI's headlights better? I think these have a nicer halo, or see whatever this looks like, but this looks a little bit more interesting to me. But overall, what do you guys like better? Let us know in the comments below. Really, one of the main differences at the back is the trunk space, and it's not necessarily about how much space it has, even though that does differ. It's the type of space that it has. This has a smaller opening, but it has a really long, deep trunk versus the Golf, which has a little bit less space, but the seats do go down very comfortably, as do in that car. But where in that car you have the frame of the car over here, in the Golf, this stays all open, and it's easier to put things that are a little bit bigger and cumbersome. So size-wise is really the biggest difference between these two cars, and the GTI and the Golf R are quite short, and the extra space that this car offers, I think it adds something to the daily drivability. Now, a GTI is a fun car, but it's not necessarily a race car. If you wanted the racing version, you would just go and get the Golf R. So the GTI is priced in the middle, but yet it gives you the performance of the GLI. I'm absolutely, completely, utterly surprised by how this car drives. I thought that this car wasn't going to be as good as it is. Outside is a little bit pedestrian, and I'm okay with that because it's going to blend in, and it has enough nice features like the little badges that stand out on the black paint. I think this car looks good in a lot of colors. It has basically 5 choices. You can custom order other choices in the Golf R, but when it comes to this car, you have basically 4 grayscale colors and red. So I think black is the right color choice. The 35th anniversary edition is really quite nice looking too. This car is fully loaded. It comes with a lot of tech underneath, so let's go see what the tech is all about. Okay, so before I get into what makes this car great, there are a lot of things that make it great. I'm going to talk about the bad. Now, it's a short list, so bear with me. First things first, it's got inconsistent materials throughout. The steering wheel is exceptional, but it's mated with really plasticky paddles, and it's forced the user of this car to install these rather rude looking paddle shifters. The build quality it's just not all there. Now, it's surprising because if you look at the dash, if you look at everything from this seating position, everything is great, but then you peek up, there's a little bit of a gap right here, and I'm not a fan of that. Now, I'm also not a fan of this weird leathery, scratchy material up top, but it's fine, it's okay. For $30,000, you sure do get a lot of car. Now, I'm not a huge enthusiast when it comes to sound, so the person that owns this vehicle, they love music, and they told me that the Beats sound system has let them down. It either has a lot of bass but not very clear, or if you tune it to be clear, it just doesn't have enough bass. So now moving on to the good, and there is a lot of it. I like how this car looks. I actually feel like there's a lot of space in here, and that is a huge bonus compared to the Golf. Now, space is not just in the front of the cabin, it's also in the rear of the cabin, but the front of the cabin is quite special in this car. Now, as a passenger, the dash does tilt away from you, and what that creates, it creates a little bit of extra room at the front. I really quite like that. The infotainment system is excellent. It's not exactly the most crisp and clean, but at $30,000, it does give you quite a lot for your money. It has a lot of information through here. The car screen menu is basically endless. It's got so many features, you can get lost in here. Now, I do really like the performance feature here. It gives you PSI for boost, it gives you temperatures, it gives you a G reading, and it does the Golf R GTI. When the hand gets close to the screen gets ready for you. Moving down here, the cup holders are usable, and the DSG comes with a nice shifter. It's really comfortable to the touch. The boot is a little bit too big. It kind of like overhangs and covers the display a little bit, so they could have made that a little bit smaller, but the buttons feel really nice. The screen here up front, now it is a little bit smaller than what is in the Golf R, but it is really clean and it follows the same theme. It has the same feel to it. Rifling through the menus, you do have quite a lot of options. If you want the RPM readout, you can get the RPM readout with the speedo, and you can still have the map in the middle. This GLI is equipped with a very large sunroof, and I am very happy for it because it does make it feel very spacious in here. It does have this little screen in case you feel like you want a little bit of a sunshade. It is a little flimsy, but that's okay. You're most likely gonna have it open anyways. The back of the seat is very spacious. This seat is quite far back, and I have a lot of leg room. There's a lot of headroom, and there's just a lot of space in here, and I think it's much bigger than a Golf. Now, what I don't like about the back generally is that the front doors are very nicely layered with nice materials. This is just scratchy materials everywhere, and the fact that it has a lot of premium materials in the front is a huge bonus, and it does feel quite special up there, but back here it's okay. I'm gonna start by saying I'm really fond of this car. It really had no business being as good as it is, because on paper it just seems like an expensive Jetta, but once you drive it, once you get a feel for it, you really get to notice the engine. The transmission changes gears so fast, and the chassis responds really well. The front E differential is very capable at helping the car put the power down, and in the corners it gives me a lot of confidence. It just rotates the car. The multi-link independent rear suspension also helps this car handle quite well. VW's DCC active suspension in this car does wonders when it comes to the ride. It's very flat through the corners, and it absorbs bumps really well in almost any of the modes. This car doesn't have the Golf R's R mode, but it does have a sport mode that still feels extremely fast. And speaking of speed, 228 horsepower, it feels way faster than that. I think the torque is at around 260, and it also feels like it has a lot more torque than that. When you give this car just a little bit of throttle in the lower RPMs, it has a lot of push, it has a lot of torque down low, and it makes it feel like it's moving the car really easily. And for everyday drivability, that is incredible, because you can move about without feeling like you need to go deep into the throttle pedal. It doesn't feel like a naturally aspirated car where you gotta hunt for the speed or you gotta hunt for the high RPM. So you don't feel like you're racing in this car all the time. It just feels like you're moving about your day. And when you put your foot down, it does feel quite good too. A little bit synthetic sounding, doesn't sound bad, but I know that what it sounds like in here versus what it actually sounds like on the outside isn't the same, and just knowing that takes away a little bit from the noise. Let's make sure we're in normal. Let's put it in sport. Throaty noise, but again, still on the synthetic side. It doesn't want any poking. It's just literally every time you want to have fun, you can just have fun with this car. And at this price point, I fail to see how you can get more car than what this car offers. Obviously, we talked about the interior of this car, and it has many features, and it's a really pleasant place to be in. And once you drive, you actually get to enjoy the screens a little bit more. This GLI is also equipped with really sharp brakes. It's just the moment you touch the top of the brake, it's very, very, very responsive. There isn't a whole lot of braking happening afterwards. I mean, it stops well enough, but it's not super aggressive compared to like the beginning portion of the brake pedal. I kind of wish it was a little better modulated, but you know what? It brakes well enough for its power. The driving experience in this car can only be described in one word, and that is fun. You can put this car in the corners and it handles really well. It's not quite a GTI, but it's very, very, very close. And for $5,000 less, you get the same performance with more space. The daily practicality of this car far outweighs the performance that the GTI offers over this. I mean, 200 pounds may be noticeable a little bit, especially in the corners, but it's not like these cars weigh a lot. This car weighs 3,200 pounds, and you really feel that light weight through the corners. It doesn't feel like it has as much understeer as certain Audis do, and I don't know how they've managed that. I'm pretty sure the front differential is really, really good, and it's doing its job. But the sense of fun that you get in this car, it's incredible. I am super surprised by this car, inside and out, and really, it was one of those cars that maybe I didn't have really high expectations for, and it just surprised me in a very, very nice way. I would highly recommend for anyone that is looking for a car in the $30,000 price range to try one of these out. It drives very well. It's a really nice place to be. I know I said that the finishings aren't very consistent. You got a little bit of material sticking out over here, and your hand feels like it's touching 3 or 4 different types of materials as you go through the interior. But for what this car offers, it's above and beyond its price range, I think, and it sort of makes the GTI a preference. You gotta choose the GTI simply because you prefer a hatchback and not a sedan. Otherwise, this is the more sensible choice. So guys, to summarize the GLI, it's essentially a sedan form of the Golf GTI, and I think it looks really good. It's a little understated in the rear, it's a little pedestrian in the rear, but the front end is really quite special. And to drive, it was a surprise. This car handles incredibly well. It has almost no understeer, and it's on these eco tires, so I can only imagine with a really good tire how good this car can be. The adaptive suspension is excellent. It rides really nice. Going through the modes, through race, sport, everything actually sort of changes the behavior of the car a little bit. I really like that. And overall, the car is really nice. At $30,000, I think it's almost a performance bargain. And speaking of performance, it has a lot of performance, but remember, this car reaches its limit very, very, very quickly. Once you find the limit in this car, it just leaves you hanging for more. You want more. And in order to get more, you need to go in a Golf R or something equivalent. So, a great car, but I just am left wanting a little bit more performance out of it. This car has a great interior. I just loved being in it. I loved driving it. I loved feeling the steering wheel. The seats are great. The dash is very, very, very nice, and everything that you see and you look, it almost is a little bit Audi-esque in terms of how the displays work. I think VW has done a great job with the GLI, and the 35th year anniversary edition car is excellent and it looks really sharp. So thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you for Shlomi for giving us your car. Thank you to Ben from Eurocharge for coming on short notice to replace the GTI. Sorry guys, we couldn't show you a GTI side by side. It would have been really nice to have the comparison, but the Golf R is essentially pretty much the same other than the drivetrain, which is quite aggressive and is very different. And the all-wheel drive system is different and the interior is slightly different, but overall the essence is there and the essence is the same. So side by side, I think I prefer the GLI to the GTI, and I think the weight difference isn't enough to change my mind, and the drivability feels very, very similar. I've driven GTIs before and they really drive the same just because they really essentially underneath they are the same. So with that being said, guys, please go drive one of these. You won't be disappointed. Have a good one. Is it E8888 or is it E8888? You know what?
VQ35B.
All right, one more time.